Yo, what's up guys? So today's topic is a question from Facebook. Why did you get, Kyle, I want to start a small company like you. Why did you pick the truck that you picked? And funny enough, on a side note, I was just pulling out from the hardware store here in the little town of Kalkaska. And it's 25 miles an hour, I think. Maybe it's 35 through town. I don't know. It's at the very most 35 miles an hour. Pulled out to make a left. I remember just the other day I got pulled over for tinted windows, right? That was the whole, like, why I pulled you over reason. And I appreciate the cops. I know all the Dallas stuff. But I think it's interesting because I just pulled out, made a left, did not, pull out in front of anybody. But there was a semi coming behind me. A semi, it was like a potato chip semi, a big 53 foot, I don't know, one of the Lays or whatever it was. This dude was fucking hauling ass. He pulled over into the right lane. I mean, I pulled out, I wasn't like trying to hot rod it, but by the time he passed me, I was doing 30, and he must have been doing 50 right through fucking town. And it's like, I get that, people are tinted windows unless you have a prescription or illegal in Michigan, but good God, pull the fucking people over that are breaking the law, like, that are seriously causing potential for a hazard. Anyways, that's my rant. So, back to why I got this truck. Number one, I think that brand loyalty and what you grew up with or what you've had good success rates with is the biggest factor in choosing any vehicle for any person or any kind of reasoning. So, that being said, I've always had GMs. Like, my dad had this old 1984 regular cab long box, heavy half-ton GMC with the tried and true powerhouse of a 6.2 liter diesel. That thing was a beast. It was a beast of a truck. It was fun. So that one, then my mom had a Suburban, I think 89 Suburban. Before that, she had like a big Dodge van or something, rad like that. And then after that, she got a Suburban. Then after my dad's truck, that first one, that GMC wore out, he got a 93 regular cab long box. They've just always been good trucks. And then that was at the time when, like, I started, I was like maybe 97. I was like 12, 13 or something. So I was really like getting excited to drive and do all that stuff. And I drove, with them around on the 2 tracks and all that kind of stuff, and on the Cherry Farms and all that. So I was always driving probably since I was like 8. But they just always ran. They never had a problem. And that 93 that my dad had, I beat the shit out of that truck. We would take it off road and just go to town with it. And it was awesome. Even that old diesel, we beat the crap out of it. And I pretty much I've had GM Chevys. I've had like a 94, 92. I think I had a 2010. Never had like a mid-2. Anyway, I just ran the shit out of them all. Just ran them. I maintained them well, kept them clean, changed the oil, things like that. I didn't like flood them through. I didn't try to drive them through a damn river all the time, and I wasn't like irrationally abusive on them. But like when I went off road with them, I put it to them. Like I took it out to have fun and just see what it could do. So, anyway, so I had that. Then always loved diesels, really ever since that 84 my dad had. Then when GM came out with the Duramax in 2001, like I always loved it. I had a work truck for a company I worked with. It was a 2001. Just like this truck, just an 01 with the Duramax in it, and it was just like, it was phenomenal to me. Like, it was amazing for how much weight you could pull, and like, it just pulled it. Like, it was crazy. Never drove a Cummins. I think a Cummins is a good motor. I'm just never going to complain and bitch and moan, and the Dodge guys are going to say, oh, you pussy-ass GMC guys with your IFS suspension that won't last more than, 80,000 miles or whatever. Hey, I don't know what to tell you. I like the IFS. It rides really nice. And it's smooth, handles really well. You don't get the potential death wobble that comes on Dodge and Fords, especially the older, like pre-2013 models. You get like 150,000 miles on them. There's a tendency for this death wobble, they call it. And I've experienced it in an old like 89 Cummins. It was pretty crazy as a passenger. So anyways, I don't know. You can argue and go back and forth on which is better of the big three, Dodge, GM, or Ford. My personal opinion, GM is the best because a couple reasons. One, if you look at the independent reviews, I like to follow the Fast Lane Truck on YouTube. They do a really, really good review, an actual real-world pulling review of these trucks. I think they started in 2011, maybe 2012. And the last 2 years, 2015 and 2014, GM is one with the Duramax, their bike gauntlet competition. And it's not about, and the thing I like about it best is I think the Fords are actually the fastest up the hill, I think. On one of them they tested a Ford, but it was a Ford. See, that was the sketchy thing, and it was 2013. Ford made a video, or they didn't make it, but they invited these guys out to, it was like Virginia or something, to test these. It was Ford, Dodge, and then they had a GM. The shitty thing was, it was not a good comparison because you had a 3500 GMC. Was it? I can't remember. It's a video. It's like 3 years old, so don't quote me on this. But I think they had a 3500 dually GMC or Chevy. They had a Ford F450. Okay, so an F450, they got the bigger rear end and the 488 gears in the rear end, right? Against a Dodge 3500 dually. So it was dualies against dualies, but the Ford had an had the F450, a much larger, basically rear end and gear ratio is, I think, about the difference. I don't know what the front end is, but regardless, it's a 450 that, they were comparing it to a 3500 Ram and a 3500 Chevy, and it's just kind of like, come on now, like apples to apples, compare the right things. And of course the Ford one pulled it much better up this hill. They were pulling like 25,000 pounds on a gooseneck up a hill, and it just passed right past the Dodge. I think in the Dodge they only in a 3500 dually, I think they only go up to like a 411 gear ratio in the rear end. Could be wrong on that, but I'm not sure. Might depend on the exact configuration. But so if you take that truck with a 411 rear end and you take any other truck, we're calling it the Ford F450 with a 488 rear end in it, like naturally you're going to get a lot more torque and power and use to be able to pull that much weight up the hill. So anyways, I just thought that was pretty shady that a company takes and does a comparison, but they're not comparing apples to apples. I think if you really want to compare apples to apples, take the exact same truck, so Dodge, Ram, or Ram, Dodge, whatever, you know what I mean, Ram, GM, and Ford, put it with their motor, their diesel motor, their diesel transmission, and the same rear end. That's like one of the most important things, because the rear end can make, it just makes such a big difference in how that truck performs for what you're doing. Like this truck has 373, GM, that's all they offer is 373. I kind of wish they would offer different gear ratios. I don't even think you can get a dually in a 411. You might, maybe, but I don't know. I think diesel, the Duramax and the GM, all you get's a 373. I think the 373 is an all-around, really good universal gear. It's tall enough so that you can get the torque that you need to go up hills and get off the line really well. Not that you're racing, but it gives you a little more torque than numerically lower gear like a 355. You lose a little bit of fuel economy because your RPMs are going to be higher. Now, don't start an argument with me now that RPMs don't always determine fuel mileage. I know that. There's a lot of different variables, in my opinion, and based on the research that I've done, that determine fuel mileage. So you can keep your RPMs low, but sometimes you'll be lugging and you'll be using a little bit more fuel. I've tested it on this truck. 6-way is different to 1. Sometimes there's just like a sweet spot, depending on the load, depending on the RPM, all that stuff. The best mileage I get with this truck is about 25, 26 miles to the gallon on the freeway, doing about 65 miles an hour. That's like this truck's sweet spot. The worst I've ever gotten pulling this big flag basically behind me, not an actual flag, but it was just a really piss poor aerodynamic load into a headwind, like a 40 mile an hour headwind. I could only even go, and I think the load is like maybe 8,000 pounds itself, maybe 9. I could only like go like 60. It was the only time I've ever had this truck struggle to pull something, and like the transmission was actually getting hot. It was like up to 160, and it was just like, holy shit. But anyways, that was the only time I've really had this thing struggle to pull something. Yeah, so that was that. So basically, that's kind of like what to consider when you're buying a truck and you want to buy a truck. But here's the deal. Here's why I bought this truck. I wanted a truck that was capable of pulling the max amount of weight. There's a couple factors in this. That was capable of pulling the max amount of weight that was legal for the combination that I was planning to do. Now, what does that all mean? I have a CDL Class A, so I can drive 26,000 pounds is basically, if you don't have a CDL Class A, tag under 26,000 pounds. If you have a CDL Class A, you gotta have a Class A because it's combination. Anything over 26,000 pounds gross total vehicle weight with a trailer, you need a CDL. Okay, Class A. Class A is the combination. Class B, I think, is just air brake. So you can drive like a big straight truck that's tagged at 42,000 pounds with a Class B. Okay, so when choosing your truck, the truck to get, plan for really like pulling up to 26,000 pounds, up to no greater than. You don't need a CDL. You probably, depending on your state and local codes or whatever, you may need a chauffeur's license. You probably will. To haul that, to pull that. And there's a couple things too, like really with any truck with a 35, even with a 3500 dually, you really don't, I think you're working the truck too hard if you want to pull over 26,000 pounds consistently. I think that if you're planning to pull that much weight consistently, if it's a couple times a year, sure, put 26,000 or 28,000 pounds on it. But if you're planning to pull over 26,000 pounds, really if you're planning to pull over like 22,000 pounds consistently, in my opinion, a 3500 is too small of a truck. You need to jump up to, like in this case, then you would have to go with a Ram or a Ford. I'm not a Ford fan really at all. I don't know. I have a good friend who's a former Ford engineer too, and we talk a lot about it. He stands behind his products. He's a great guy, and he really does like them, and he knows a lot about what's gone into the production of that 6.7 liter. Thinks it's a good truck, but really the aftermarket world, what I hear from guys talking, what I see on the road the most, GMs and Dodge. So that to me says a lot right there. Fords are cheaper price-wise. So, anyways, it's kind of a long video, but I think it's important to really talk about this in choosing. I mean, you're basically buying a $30,000 to $70,000 truck, depending on if you get it used or if you buy it new. So it's for just starting out. It's your first first big investment. I think it's an important investment too, because you want it to last as long as possible. I'd like to at least get 500,000 out of this truck. It's currently got 167 or something on it. Runs and drives like new. All I do is maintain it, change the fluids in it, and that's it. You know, put tires on it. I'm on the second set of tires. Michelin's do great. So really the choice of your truck should be based on what you prefer, number one. If you're a Ford guy, then go get a Ford. If you're a Ram guy, then go get a Ram. If you like the GM, then go get a GM. Personally, a lot of guys that I know like the GMs, or they've run Fords, or they've run Dodges. They go to the GMs because they ride nicer. The Duramax, especially the 2011 and newer, it's the LML engine code, they call it, has been the most robust, the most reliable, the best engine GM, diesel engine GM has put in their trucks. The aftermarket guys love it. It's bulletproof up to about like 600 horse, 550 horse. There's a lot of really good things about that motor. A lot of guys are running them, you know, 500,000 miles now. So they're a really good, proven motor. As far as the interior goes, they've got a lot of just creature comforts, ergonomics, and all that kind of stuff that you know, we kind of want and sort of expect, you know, when we're buying a truck like this. Also, in 2011, the frames on the GMs were upgraded, the whole chassis, so you've got a bigger frame. You got more weight, but not like significant. You have bigger frames, bigger torsion bars, which are what controls the suspension. You've got a much larger steering system, so you've got bigger tie rods, bigger tie rod ends, and all that stuff. I don't know what the heck they're specifically called, but basically your steering system has been significantly upgraded from like around 2010, 2011. They did a huge chassis modification, and from what I know, I haven't pulled with the older models, but these LMLs, the 2011, 2012, and